Hello, this is Bill Bianchi with Progressive Democrats of America, Chicago. We're talking today about the elections with Steve Cobble, PDA's elections and policy guy. Steve is one of the founders of PDA, and he also serves as a fellow at the Progressive Institute for Policy Studies. Thanks for talking with us today, Steve.
Thank you.
Let's start with some analysis and then move into the conclusions about what it all means, particularly for progressives. In your view, what happened and what really stands out for you in terms of the election results?
What stands out for me, Bill, is the electorate itself. It was the lowest share of white voters ever. We have an increasingly diverse electorate. It was 13% African American, 10% Latino, 4 or 5% others, including a chunk of Asian Americans, which is a fast rising demographic, as you know. And the conservatives all along, and some of the conservative pollsters seem to be banking on a much lower African American and Latino turnout this year than they got. And they were a little surprised when the voters turned out. They weren't as excited as in 2008, but they were determined. I think they were going to go to the polls, even if they weren't throwing their fists in the air at the same time. So that stood out to me. The second thing stood out is the great success of progressive Senate candidates. Elizabeth Warren and Sherrod Brown and Tammy Baldwin. I mean, who would have believed a year ago, A, the Democrats would hang on to the Senate, and B, gain seats, and C, gain them led by a woman who talks overtly about corporations not being people, and an openly gay, openly lesbian woman in Wisconsin. 5 months after Scott Walker didn't get recalled, she wins by 5 points. I mean, these are kind of astounding facts.
And she's pretty progressive too, isn't Tammy
Very
Baldwin?
Progressive. Very progressive. Yes, indeed.
So we gained 2 progressive senators. I guess that is very important.
Well, we hung on to Sherrod Brown too, which the Wall Street was clearly trying to take him out. So that was good. And the new senators we have in North Dakota and Montana are sort of blue collar types. They're not with us sometimes on environment. The one from Montana hasn't been with us sometimes on environmental issues and stuff, but they're kind of regular people types that I think they'll be with us on Wall Street issues, for instance.
Great, but they're not blue dogs by any means.
They're not. Well, they might. The one from North Dakota might have a blue dog tendency on the budget, because she's her mentor is Kent Conrad. Heidi Heitkamp is her name. She's a wonderful person, but when she was Attorney General years ago, she signed the amicus on the Buckley challenge to the Supreme Court. She's a fair trader from way back. You know, she wants to do a balanced budget, but carve out Social Security and Medicare. So for North Dakota, her 3,000 vote victory was pretty impressive. Nobody thought she was going to do that.
Great. What do you think these results mean for the president and the administration?
Well, I think the president's hand in whatever he wants to do is more solid. He went to the voters as a flawed president, one who didn't, bring in paradise in 4 years. And what we found out is 51% of the voters have a memory. That's probably lower than you wish it was, but it's enough to win a presidential election. They more or less remembered that his mess started with Bush. And so they didn't, even though many of them were frustrated with the way he had tried to work himself out of the economic mess, they didn't blame it all on him, and they didn't blame it all enough they didn't believe Mitt Romney when he gave the usual 1%er nostrums about how he was going to get out of this. So I think his hand is stronger. Like many of us, I'm a little nervous about how he's going to play it, because he seems to be somewhat fascinated with as you know, the grand bargain, and hopefully he feels the energy that came to his campaign from people who wanted to protect Medicare, wanted to protect Social Security, and want to raise taxes on the wealthy. And he does, he is feels tougher in negotiating with the Republicans than he did before. That's hopefully it's his comments. You probably noticed, Bill, that when he talked about Medicare, he used to say, "I won't let them voucherize it, or I won't let them slash it."
Right.
He didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't say, "I won't let them touch it."
Right.
And those are slash is a lot different from touch. So.
Well, what about the Republican dragon? Has it been slain, or is it merely scotched?
Nah, you can't put a stake through that dragon's heart. They'll just keep. That's a vampire dragon. It just keeps coming back.
Vampire dragon. Okay.
We had a vampire capitalist or vulture capitalist, and we got vampire dragons. But
all right. So it's going to be around.
They have some problems. I mean, the major and growing parts of the electorate have tuned them out because they're too mean. Young people, gays and lesbians, Latinos, African Americans, single women, to a large extent, the Democrats get some unearned grace from them because they win their votes whether or not they actually deliver. So the president gets 71% of Latino votes for the mini DREAM Act after 3 years of not getting anywhere with a real DREAM Act or an immigration reform bill. And the reason is, of course, because Latinos can tell big chunk of Republicans don't really like them, and they make it clear. And so, having said that, the Latino vote has strengthened the president's hand to do real immigration reform now, and I think the Republicans may believe now that they have to do something. You can already see Shan Hannity was evolving on the air the other day on this issue. They want to split the Latino vote again and get this off their back. So no, they don't. And the other thing, Bill, which you know, the huge amounts of money that were spent, we did actually pretty well at the top in fending that off on our Senate races and our presidential races. But the further down the ballot you go, the more that extra money means. And the right-wing billionaires, they know that it was big money that nominated Romney in the primaries. And they know they can have an intimidating effect on state legislative candidates and congressional candidates and, judges running for office. So just because they didn't get their way this time doesn't mean they're not coming back. I think, in fact, what it probably means they're coming back earlier next time. I think one of their conclusions is going to be they waited too long to start spending their billions. But so no, they're not gone. They'll be back.
So what do the results mean for the Democratic Party then, and also for the growth of an independent, progressive political base, either locally or nationally?
Well, the House results, the gerrymandered House results, are a problem for us ongoing because more of the Republican Party is in office and feels secure in office. And they are secure. They can be crazy and secure. Steve King won re-election in Western Iowa against the former First Lady of Iowa. Most of their lunatics won. Michelle Bachmann squeaked through. It looks like Alan West lost barely, but most of them got through, and a lot of them got through without even, any much problem, including the guy that our friend Dr. Taj was running against, who apparently is quite a personality, and he won. So this is an ongoing problem that they feel safe in the House, and we're going to have trouble cracking that because of gerrymandering. We gain ground in the Senate. We not only have more Democrats in the Senate, we have more progressive Democrats, and even the ones that are just coming back, like Tester, like Sherrod Brown, they're probably a little angrier about the way they were treated by the big money boys. And hopefully that'll make them a little more hostile to the next set of schemes that Wall Street cooks up, or the next set of insurance scams that come down the pike, and maybe they'll strengthen Dodd-Frank a little bit and things like that. So I think on the Senate front, we made some gains. We showed we could compete overall on the money front. The money front in general is a big problem for any independent progressive.
So the money, it's still the money.
Well, it's just a big problem, and the two-party system and the single-member gerrymandered districts all work against independent politics.
Two questions then before we wrap it up. What role do you think progressive groups like PDA played in this election?
Well, if we could have found, we'd have had a very positive role, a very happy role if we could have found 1,200 more votes for Dr. Gill. I know he hasn't conceded yet, but that was a great campaign. Nobody expected him to do that, and you guys in Chicago were among the first to help him out and to be there on the site with him, and that was just tremendous. And you deserve great credit. PDA deserves great credit. They were one of the only Washington groups that really gave him a big help, and that was awesome. Overall, because we focused in we helped Tammy Baldwin, we helped Elizabeth Warren, but PDA's focus really has always been bolstering the Progressive Caucus in the House, and because we couldn't make enough headway on taking back the House and putting Speaker Pelosi back in charge, I think that's a tough thing. PDA is going to have to sit down and think about how we keep approaching that. We still have our friends in the Progressive Caucus, and our relationships with them are better than ever, but they're still, a corner of the House, and John Boehner doesn't care what Raul Grijalva thinks about stuff, and that's a problem for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, then. Steve, final thoughts, big picture conclusion?
The big picture conclusion is that the last thing that happened in the campaign was Superstorm Sandy, which I think helped the president with the popular vote, whether his campaign wants to admit it or not. And what the good thing, I think, for all of us means that it knocked open the door a little bit to have a conversation about global warming. And I think the whole human race needs that, and certainly we needed it in our politics because nobody wants to talk about it. I think that storm put climate change back on the table, and I think that's a good thing. I think maybe we can make it be at least a little part of Obama's second-term agenda.
Great. Thanks very much, Steve. It's been good talking with you. We've been talking with Steve Cobble from Chicago. This is Bill Bianchi with Progressive Democrats of America in Chicago.